Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Tuesday, March 26th. And for the first time in a while, Jori, it's just you and I for a full episode, no guest, just you and I previewing the season. Very excited for regular season baseball to come in just 2 days now.
Yes, knocking right on the door. The Blue Jays season set to get underway just a few days away at Tropicana Field against the Tampa Bay Rays. And still some roster decisions left to be decided.
Yes, I know you sing it's the most wonderful time of the year for free agent season, but I mean, this has got to be a pretty close second with the return of meaningful baseball. The spring atmosphere is back, and I just think there's nothing better than the season getting underway. And we're going to hit you with a little season preview. We're going to get into some over-unders, some bold predictions, and generally just kind of tee up things as the season gets underway. So before we do, though, as Jori mentioned, of course, there are some news and notes that we should get to before kind of diving into the preview. Of course, the Toronto Blue Jays confirming the other day that Ernie Clement, Davis Schneider, Daniel Vogelbach have made the opening day roster for the Blue Jays, and then we're still waiting on a couple things from the bullpen. Seems like Jordan Romano, Eric Swanson going to start the year on the IL. So I mean, let's get into the position player side of things, Jori. How are you feeling about the bench looking a little Brian Serven-y, Davis Schneider, Ernie Clement, Daniel Vogelbach? How are you feeling about that foursome kind of earning those four spots?
Yeah, compelling for sure. I think that the biggest thing definitely is the I'd say probably the Ernie Clement making the team over, Santiago Espinal obviously finds his way out the door, as we discussed in our last episode. That's obviously the biggest surprise. But I actually think I was almost about to say this is Davis Schneider having to fight for his spot. And, he's won the spot and that's all good and dandy. But I do think it's interesting that he had to win his spot.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about this a while ago, but I was kind of like, how is there any possible way that he hadn't earned it already with what he did last year? Like, it would have been shocking to me if he started the year in AAA. Obviously, like the spring has been a little tough for him, so maybe that contributed to it. But I think as far as like just kind of having a power bat, like there's no way that you couldn't have him on the roster.
Yeah, too much value, and there is some positional versatility with him as well. The ability to play a little bit of outfield, a little bit of infield. So a little bizarre that he had to battle for the spot, but the right decision ultimately being made in that capacity as well. Interesting to me that Daniel Vogelbach does get the nod. Not so much like interesting in terms of the actual decision itself. That was kind of projectable as far as the spring training production went and as far as the way the roster makeup kind of is going to go. But I do think still like his tryout is not over because Joey Votto's sitting in AAA. Sounds like he's pretty close to being back into game action, and he's still, for all intents and purposes, he's on a couple $1 million contract. It's a contract that, if push came to shove, he gets DFA'd, and nobody kind of bats an eye. So he made the team, but I don't think his tryout is over by any stretch.
Yeah, he's got a short leash, right? Like if he comes up and has a really tough start to the year, like I could even see them turning around and being like, all right, well, we're just gonna call up Nathan Lucas and have him on the bench or whatever. Did you kind of like? I mean, speaking of Lucas, like, were you surprised at all not to see him on the roster? Obviously, very strong spring, the most outfield capable bench option that they have. So they're running three outfielders. Of course, Kevin Biggio, David Schneider, Ernie Clement all can play out there. So that probably eliminated Lucas necessarily from the discussion, where he would have been like your center fielder on the bench or whatever. But I think your center fielder on the bench is the guys playing left and right field.
Pretty much. And I also think that what is interesting is the decision to effectively cut bait with Santiago Espinal to keep Serven when you also have IKF and Dalton Varsho as emergency backup catchers. Because to me, that's their purpose, is to have them as an emergency option. Now, I get that they're not your third string catcher, so I can understand the idea that you're going to bring a guy in and have him start on your 40 man for the purposes of keeping those guys as emergency options. But I still think it's really interesting that they were presented with an opportunity to have a guy like IKF and Varsho become emergency catchers, basically emergency backups, and we're kind of like, yeah, it's more valuable to have them in the field than to keep Santiago Espinal.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. As far as like, Danny Jansen's going to be on the IL for a couple weeks. So if you were like planning on not carrying a second catcher for those 2 weeks, you're essentially locking in one of IKF or Dalton Varsho to probably 2 or 3 starts behind the plate and potentially more depending on how Alejandro Kirk feels. So I think it really makes sense just to have Servin there at least for the time being where he can catch those 3 games or whatever until Jansen's back, and you don't have to kind of risk the injury or further diminish your defense by putting one of those guys behind the plate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And it's realistically the more nuanced take to be like, well, you don't want either of IKF or Varsho starting. You want someone that's capable of starting games. Now, Servin does have options, so you're not going to have to cut bait with him when Jansen does ultimately make his way back to the roster. So, no harm, no foul. It's not like he's out of options and, you add him to the 40 man. And then as soon as you want to dump him, you've got to DFA him, right? He's able to be sent down. But I still do think that, and again, we talked about this last episode, just that losing Espinal for Brian Servin is a bit of a weird decision, but the process in the decision, you can kind of figure out the logic there, even though I feel like you could probably have Varsho and IKF slot in for 1 or 2 games over the 16, 17 game span. You're likely not going to have Danny Jansen.
Yeah, I think looking at like losing Espinal as well kind of opens the cap space for you to add basically Daniel Vogelbach and Joey Votto at some point where where you'll have to guarantee their contracts, right? So giving those 2 guys like 2 million each. So clearing Santiago opens up the cap space for that to happen. Or I guess it's not really cap space, but the room in the
The
salary
budget, the
budget.
budget
Yeah.
space, whatever you want to call it. Same
Yeah.
idea.
So I think like the servant thing is just a necessity of like being a professional baseball team. As far as Santiago, like it's like we said, I think it's if he wasn't like a 5-year MLB veteran, I think he gets sent down. If he wasn't like a respected member of the clubhouse that they wanted to give major league opportunities to, he probably gets sent down.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't really like kind of read into like Servin replacing Espinal that much, but I think it'll be interesting because obviously they announced Vogelbach's made the roster, but we haven't gotten the announcement as to who will come off the 40 man because right now Servin replaces Espinal, that gets you to 40. So Vogelbach is now going to have to take someone off, and I mean like kind of looking at their 40 man, like we know who's definitely going to be on it, but I'm curious as to who you think might be the guy coming off. Like position players that aren't going to be on the major league roster that are on the 40 are Addison Barger, Leo Jimenez, Spencer Horwitz, Elvis Martinez, and Nathan Lucas. I would say those 5 are safe.
Yeah, I don't see
So
any of those guys. I mean, depending on how the organization values Nathan Lucas, he's not exactly the youngest guy of that group. So it's not impossible, but
yeah,
given that he does have options, it'd be pretty surprising.
he's going to be 30 this year.
Yeah. So
So I mean, he's another guy where I'm like, it wouldn't surprise me if him being demoted and he's kind of like, hey, like please trade me. Like if you asked for a trade, wouldn't totally shock me just based on like him appearing to be a fringe MLB caliber starter. Like I could see him starting for, like he probably deserves a shot to show what kind of baseball player he is at this point. And there just
mhm.
really isn't that opportunity for him in Toronto. So like would you consider trading him kind of in a similar deal to the Espinal one, just to give him some opportunity somewhere else if he's kind of asked for it, or would you do you need him as kind of like that fourth outfielder in case Springer, Varsho, Kiermaier gets hurt at some point this season, which given the track record of the two in center and right, I could say would be a definite possibility.
No, and we'll get into that as far as the logistics of those two and their injury history as we continue to basically preview the season. But I don't really see an avenue to trading him, just as far as it's not like Santiago Espinal where he's got these years of major league service time and he's arbitration eligible or this, that, and the other. So I don't really know that he's a guy that would get traded. But I do think that given the fact that he is, going to be 30, the clock has kind of expired on him, so to speak, as a young org depth guy. And he's kind of in that category of you'd rather sacrifice him even with options for a younger dude. Now, to me, I think there's got to be some pitchers, and again, I don't have the 40 man in front of me, but I would imagine there's probably a pitcher or two that's kind of hanging around. Maybe you're looking at a guy like Yosver Zulueta, who you're not a fan of, who's really
Well,
struggled the
I can
last
read
year
you
and
the
a
list
bit,
of
or
the guys who are probably likely in contention to be DFA'd in this spot, and it's probably Hagen Danner, Brendan Little, Wes Parsons, Yosfer Zulueta.
yeah. So you're looking at one of those three.
You
Wes
can put
Parsons
Zach
is an
Pop in there
easy
if you
pick.
want.
Yeah, I think Wes Parsons is kind of the lob pick there. But given that he can start, and I don't even think he was that bad in AAA, maybe you like that he's got some length. And then, I mean, Hagen Danner is a little younger. Maybe you don't want to lose him, but he's kind of in no man's land as a reliever. It's probably down to one of those three, I would say.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it just looking at it, like if I had to make the decision tomorrow, I'm probably leaning Zulueta. Like, does he get claimed or does he get picked up? Like, maybe because he throws 98 and a team might be, a specific team that Toronto will be playing right away would be kind of maybe intrigued by that or um but yeah, I think I'd probably lean him in this situation or maybe even Brendan Little. Like I know they bought him from the Chicago Cubs or whatever, but like are you probably just look and you say who's the least likely to get picked up, and then that's who you go with.
Presumably, yeah. And I don't think it's really something of significant substance and a significant concern, but still, it's org depth that you're not going to want to necessarily lose for nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think like as far as that goes, like opening day rotation pretty set. Sounds like Gossman's going to be ready to go. So we're going to be Barrios, Bassett, Kikuchi, Francis, and then likely Gossman getting that fifth start in the series opener against Houston Astros. Bullpen wise, it seems like Romano and Swanson are going to start on the IL. So right now your bullpen is Genesis Cabrera, Chad Green, Jimmy Garcia, Tim Meza, and Trevor Richards. So you're going to have um two replacement there. Like I would assume we can probably put Mitch White into that group as he might be probably the long man, right? With Kevin Gossman, you never know. Like you might need a little extra length, so probably Mitch White, and then you're going to need two other guys. And is that Yariel Rodriguez and Nate Pearson? Is that Nate Pearson and Zach Pop? Is that Hagen Danner and Nate Pearson? I mean, what are you kind of thinking for those last three bullpen spots?
Yeah, it seems to me like Nate Pearson is the obvious option. Again, it's a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. How are you going to say no to that? And he might not still have that in his arsenal, but he can reach back for it. And I think that's something that just the Blue Jays are never going to say no to. It's the reason he's hung around for so long. And your other guy could be any combination. I think Zach Pop had some success last year when he wasn't hurt for the vast majority of the season. They spent a lot of money on Yariel Rodriguez. Sounds like he would be a feasible option, although again, as we had stated couple of months ago, seems like a guy that probably ends up stretched out in some capacity in AAA to start the season and eventually makes his way to the big club. But I think kind of those three options realistically, I just don't see Danner in that mix. I think you're probably looking at aforementioned. You're probably looking at Pop and Pearson of that group to crack the big league roster. And I wouldn't say for either of them to unpack their bags because they are almost certainly to be the first ones down when Romano and Swanson, your two most valuable relievers, make the way back.
Yeah, and it's tough because like none of them separated themselves during the spring either. I mean, just looking at it right here, Nate Pearson threw 9 2/3 innings, had 6.5 ERA. Brendan Little threw 8 innings, 6.75 ERA. Zach Pop threw 7 1/3, 4.91 ERA. Hagen Danner threw 6 innings in the spring, gave up a had a 4.5 ERA. So, like, obviously, again, like spring training isn't everything, but when none of those guys like really separate themselves, anyways, then it kind of just you probably just default to the guys with the MLB experience who were on the opening day roster last year.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, we've talked about it several times, really, that Nate Pearson could become a high leverage elite reliever tomorrow. And like, would anyone be shocked? I don't think so. The same can't necessarily be said for Zach Pop, but still, just the idea is that these guys are clearly both capable, and in one case have a ceiling that seems like they could reach. But I just don't see them being anything more than functionally stopgaps.
Yeah, I mean they're there for the couple weeks that you would be without Romano and Swanson, who it kind of sucks the IL backdating at the beginning of the year, where if they start the year in the IL, they can't come back until April 9th. So that's tough, but it is the way that she works. So
Don't get
what
hurt. Simple as that.
don't get hurt. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That shoulder soreness, just pitch through it.
Just pitch it.
Just pitch through it.
Alec Manoa can learn a thing or two about that, right? Or he knows.
Well, I mean, what do you think they're going to do with him? I mean, that's an interesting kind of rod. Like, do you start him on the IL, I guess, and then give him a AAA assignment to start the year when he's ready to go, or is he like you put him on the IL and then you're putting him on the major league roster when he's
Well,
back?
you're probably starting him in AAA, but probably on rehab assignment. I would say you're probably not demoting him. You're not gonna do that, and it extends your window and gives you some time to make some decisions. And again, it also comes back to the bench, right? I don't think that bench that foursome there is set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. So could even see a scenario where Manoa makes his way up, and you're probably sending down a pitcher, but maybe you're kind of like maybe there's some shuffling that goes around. Maybe David Schneider ends up in AAA very briefly for some reason or another. I mean, it's unlikely, but there's going to be some shuffling going on at the fringes of the roster. That much is certain.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly a lot of roster churn anyway is going to happen during the regular season. I mean, you look at the Blue Jays roster last year and like they didn't really have all that much, I guess. But at the same time, like you look at how many pitchers that they used, right? And it's like Hagen Danner would have pitched a lot more if he didn't get hurt in his very first inning with the team. They started the year with Adam Simber, Anthony Bass on the opening day roster. Trent Thornton was on the team. Thomas Hatch was on the team at some points. Jay Jackson, of course, was there. So, it's all fun to talk about like the opening day roster, but it's not like there's going to be a lot of guys coming up and pitching on the roster eventually. Anyways.
Yeah, no, lots will change. That much is apparent because it's 162 games and nobody stays healthy for that entire stretch.
All right, let's move on to the fun stuff. Let's move on to the season preview, some over-unders, some bold predictions. Hope you got your Buffalo Wild Wings wing hotness grader ready because we're back. Let's how do you want to go? You just want to trade over-unders and then we'll kind of work through it that way?
Yeah, I think we should just jump in with that. And I'm happy to jump off the start. And I think we should
All right.
start with the biggest one, with the most obvious one, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., obviously coming off a disappointing year last season. So Vladdy bounce back in store is the question. 33 and a half home runs for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., over or under?
I'm gonna go over. I think he's back. I'm gonna go over, but I don't think it's like a 50 home run season. I'm gonna say like 35 to 38 is what I think. I think he'll probably be in similar form to like 2022-ish, like somewhere like right, like where he's kind of in between 2023 and 2021. And I think he's gonna have a really good season. I think he'll probably be kind of in the 140, 45 WRC plus range with kind of that 35 home run-ish.
So this one's tied to one of my bold predictions that we'll get to much later, but I'm also going to take the over. And I don't think it's any surprise to say that the podcast named after the Toronto Blue Jays is high on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and his ex-Woba, maybe helping drive some positive regression in the year to come.
I mean, that 227 WRC plus in spring training is pretty nice.
It certainly is. I would go on a side of things to come, but it's hopefully something.
Yeah. Great spring for Vladdy. He was great in 2023 or 2023 spring training as well. But it's funny if you want to read into spring training stuff, which we don't. But 2021 spring training, he had a 220 WRC plus, and then 2023 spring training, he had a 158 WRC plus, and then this year he had a 227. So sign of things to come. Let's go to another potential bounce back. I will hit you with Dalton Varsho F WAR over under 3.8. Last year he was a 2.2.
I am gonna take the over on that one, but that's a weird over to take almost for me because I'm not that high on Varsho. I think that the defense, and especially if he's gonna get some more options in center field, because let's face it, Kevin Kiermaier is probably not playing 130 games this go around. I think that there's going to be a lot of defensive value there. The hitting during spring looked good. It's also spring training, and I don't know how much we want to read into his spring training stats. With that said, we just talked about Vladdy's 200 plus WRC plus there. So I guess what if it's the narrative? Then sure. But I guess I'll say over with the caveat of a lot of defensive value brought from the center field position.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an easy over actually, because if he puts up like a 100 WRC plus, I think he's a lock to be like a 4-win player just based on the defense, where last year he was like such a significant below average, like he was so below average at the plate and he was still like a 2.2 win player, whereas now we can kind of like, well, you hope, but you almost expect him to kind of be around, if not a little bit above league average at the plate, which would easily carry him to like almost 5 wins, I would say.
Now that would be, I mean, it's in the realm of possibilities, but if he approaches 5 wins, I will drink pickle juice on our season ending podcast.
All right, we're clipping that.
We're
clipping that.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's move on to a guy that's from a second year to a first year Blue Jay, and Justin Turner, another guy that's going to be hitting in the middle of the lineup for the Blue Jays. And we'll stick with the home run theme. The newest redhead on the Toronto Blue Jays, Justin Turner, 19 and a half home runs last year, hit 23 home runs over or under.
I'll go over. I think he hits a good amount of home runs this year. He's we kind of look at last year, and we talked about this a little bit, whereas like his last month was really hampered by his injury and playing through it for whatever reason. But I think you get kind of a full season as a DH from him, kind of protect the health a little bit. And I'll take the over there.
I'm going to go with the under. I was anti Brannen Belt last year. I'm not anti Justin Turner. I just don't like old people. You know what I'm saying? And Justin Turner, I'm an ageist. I'm a violently ageist man. And Justin Turner is 39, and I'm not going to dispute his recognition of the zone. And I'm not going to disagree with any of that. But I do think him falling apart a little bit at the end of last season, even through injury, is not necessarily a fluke. And I would like to say he will hit 20 bombs, but I also don't know that you can really take that to the bank. And I also think, a 17, 18 home run season, there's a way for that to be productive for him. So I think I'm going to take the under. nothing dramatic, but I don't know if he's got 20 home run pop in him as a 39-year-old.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. He's like they say about I mentioned the injury stuff again, and we've already talked about this, but like 39, 40-year-olds, they do tend to get hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
as we saw with Brandon Belt last year, and Brandon Belt was like 36. So let's keep on rolling here. They bounce back contenders again. Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk batting average over under 270.
I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over. I know that last year, every metric, he basically has not been a good player since July 2022. I don't think that much is a surprise to anybody. I also just refuse to give up on this guy. He was so good during that stretch. He was in the Vlad Jr. discussion as far as young guys on the up and coming. I think he was one of the youngest guys in the league with a 130 or 140 WRC plus or something. He made the All-Star game. He looked like almost like a franchise catcher. He looked like he was going to be a top 10, borderline top 5 catcher, and then just crumbled. And with his recognition of the zone, with his bat control, I don't see why he can't be a 300 hitter. So I will say over on that one.
Yeah, so it's actually a tough one for me. Like, I mean, it's funny because he's a 268 career hitter. But even in 2022, like, I mean, he was so good in that first half, and then like obviously kind of things didn't go his way in the second half. But I I don't want to be like on the over for everybody, but I feel like 270 is like a pretty good bar for him to where like it seems likely to me that he hits 270 if even if like the power isn't necessarily there. I could definitely see him popping off for like a 275 average and reaching base at like a 350 clip or whatever.
Yeah, which seems reasonable. Again, it's just a question of whether or not that stretch at the beginning of 2022 is for real, or whether that was just a brief mirage. Gonna
Yeah,
jump in
like
with
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, is he the hitter from the first 400 plate appearances of that season, or is he the hitter that we've seen over his past like 700?
yeah, which is, I mean, you want to talk sample sizes?
In
Certainly
this
not.
case, I do not.
Certainly not in his favor. Okay, let's move on here. Isaiah Kiner for left, another new Blue Jay. Last 3 years, he had in 2021 a 1.5 F4. In 2022, had he had a 1.6 F4. In 2021, in 2022, he had a 1.5 F4. Last year, had a 0.2 F4. Blue Jays, however, chose to give him a nice payday. So, do they see something in him? IKF WAR over under 2.15 F4.
2.15. That's I mean, he's never done it. I gotta go under. I have a hot take coming up later related to IKF, but I'm gonna go under. I just think the offense is so bad, and regardless of how good he's looked this spring, I just don't believe that he's gonna be a above league average player this year.
Okay, so this is kind of an off the cuff hot take here, but IKF has a little bit of Dalton Varshowitis in him that the defense can carry. And if he's going to be your starting third baseman every day, in a position he's won a gold glove, in a position he has been an above average to very good defender at over a pretty substantial sample size, I think that defense can carry him to the over. I wouldn't say that over is likely, but I don't think it's impossible.
All right, let me hit you with some math here. So IKF in 2020, the American League Gold Glove winning third baseman, 0.8 F WAR over 58 games. So you can don't I don't love Gold Glove voting in general, but we can assume that a lot of his defense from that season came from, or oh, sorry, a lot of his value came from his defense, right? He wins Gold Glove, whatever. So if we take that number and we divide it by how like you war per game, right? Like his war per game in 2020, and then you stretch that over like a 162 game sample, he's a 2.2 win player. So essentially what you're saying is that his defense is going to be on that same level again, mostly playing third base, and that carries him to that number over 162 games.
And listen, would it be impossible for him to be a 90 WRC plus guy? I don't think it is. And if he's a 90, 95 WRC plus guy, you're gonna maybe get into that 3 WAR range, which would be kind of shocking almost from him, but like it's not an out of the it's not a completely outlandish claim.
Yeah, if
It
if
sounds like
he
you think it's an outlandish claim.
if he does this thing that he's only ever done once in a 58 game season, but no, like I mean, I don't disagree that like he could get to like the 90 95 WRC plus mark. I just it's like the bad is so has been so bad forever, and I just don't I just find it hard to believe that like you look at it and you're like he's a legit Matt Chapman replacement.
I don't think anybody says that, but apparently Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins feel that way. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, the spring has been very nice for him as well. He's got 154 WRC plus, 341 average, 442 OBP, 467 BABIP. But yeah, let's keep going here. One player we didn't talk about really all that much in our roster discussion, but noted future Hall of Famer Joey Votto. And let's set the over under for his plate appearances this year at let's just go 75.
I'm gonna have to go under. I'm gonna have to go under. I think that this injury kind of kills the momentum that he seemingly was building. And I think it's such an uphill climb for him to be a contributor for this team over a sustained stretch. Now, I do think he does eventually crack the roster, and I actually have a bold prediction that we'll get to, and you'll give me your take on that when it comes up regarding Joey Votto and his place on the Toronto Blue Jays. But I don't think that he's a guy that will spend more than a couple of weeks tops as a bench guy for the Blue Jays.
I'm gonna go over. And to me, there's gonna be a little bit of pressure to get him on the roster, right? And it's gonna be interesting because they're guaranteeing Daniel Vogelbach money by putting him on the roster. So it's gonna be like, are you okay wasting $4 million for a player who might be worse than Daniel Vogelbach if you're gonna just cut ties with Vogie after you bring Votto up? But I think that the pressure is gonna be there, and you're gonna have to give him a little bit of run, right? So for 75, we kind of said this before we started recording, but I feel like for him, it's either going to be like 10 plate appearances or like 200. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of in between there, unless the first like 50 are like 40 strikeouts or something like that.
Yeah, but even still, I mean, that's what happened with Brandon Belt last season. They let him strike out until guy was generating like energy with like it was like wind turbines out here. So I think that they have enough, and obviously the commitment to Brandon Belt was much more substantial than to Joey Votto, but they have patience for guys finding it at an older age, evidently, as we saw last year. So there is opportunity for him to pick up plate appearances. I think it's more that the opportunity does not exist for him.
And I'll disagree. I think the opportunity will be there. I think he'll eventually get on the roster, and I think they're gonna let him kind of run with it. I know it might end up being an interesting like roster construction look with Justin Turner like basically being a full-time DH, and he doesn't necessarily have um specific handed splits, right? Like it's not like he's awful against righties, so you're not going to be pushing all that often to be like, oh shoot, we need we need a left-handed hitter in for Justin Turner here because he's significant, he's good enough against righties to kind of do the job himself. So the opportunity is going to have to be earned, and we'll see how that goes.
We'll see how that goes. Let's move along here. And this isn't quite an over under. It's a little bit different, but similar vein and similar to something that you brought up a little bit ago. What will be higher? Kevin Kiermaier's games played. He played 123 games last season, or Dalton Varshaw's OPS plus.
I'm gonna go OPS plus Dalton Varsho. I think Kiermaier probably. Uh, I'm thinking he's probably around the 100 game mark this year. Like obviously, the health thing is kind of always up in the air with him, and I just think that it just makes so much more sense for this team to have Dalton Varsho playing center field anyways. And if Varsho can hit to like a 105 OPS WRC plus, then I think that it just makes that decision even easier to run him out in center field and let that happen. Um, yeah, I'll take Varsho.
I'm also going to take Varsho, but with a very reluctant caveat that neither of those are over 100. I don't
Ooh,
think.
oh
So
wow,
I'm not sure. I want to buy the Varsho bounce back. I really do, but I just feel like there's so much room for improvement with him that a 15-point jump in his OPS or WRC plus or any of that is still a league average bat. So I think
you're
there's so
thinking
much
you're thinking
room.
like 100 to 95, basically.
I'm thinking you're right in that ballpark. I think someone ends up with 98 and someone ends up with 97. And it's one of those games and one of those OPS plus, and you can decide which is which.
We'll see. We'll see. We had yeah. Yeah. I think the Varsho, like he'll at least I feel like he'll be around 100, which is fair. And Kiermaier maybe he hits for more power and the Jays are like, yeah, we're just gonna run you out there as much as we can and we'll see. But let's move on to some pitchers here. Obviously Kevin Gausman like not missing a turn through the rotation. Like fairly significant news. So for him, I have the over under for him set at his Cy Young finish. So I have it set 4.5. So does he finish higher than fourth in Cy Young voting or lower than fourth? And this is also making some very bold assumptions that he's going to be a Cy Young finisher, but I'm pretty confident in Kevin Gausman being an elite pitcher in the American League. So I think this is a fair over under to set.
I'm gonna set the I don't know what the right word is here. He is going to finish in the top three once again, and I think he's going to win the Cy Young this year. He was
Wow.
so very close, and he lost to Garrett Cole, not in the picture this year. If he's healthy and he pitches like he did last year, who's in his way? Because to me, I don't know who is.
Yeah, I am on the record at a other publication as having four other players ahead of him in the Cy Young voting, so I like kind of have to take the under. I think if he pitches the same as he does last year, like yeah, I think he's probably close to winning. I assume that there's like like some age stuff. Obviously, the shoulder fatigue does have like it gives you a little bit of pause. So I'll go under, but I'm saying like he probably finishes like fifth or sixth.
I'm thinking this year it could happen. I don't see why not.
I mean, he's the best Blue Jays pitcher since Roy Halladay, and it would be pretty sweet for him to win a Cy Young.
All right, let's move along here. We've mentioned a couple of home run props. I've got one more dinger prop for you for another mustachioed fella. David Schneider, 18 and a half home runs. Are you taking the over to the under on apparently a Blue Jays bench piece?
18, I'm taking the over. I think he's probably does he play enough to hit 18 home runs though?
That's kind of what the question is because the power is real. There's no concern about him hitting 18 home runs if he played 162 games or I guess 19. The
Yeah.
question is, does Kevin Biggio steal enough at bats to make Schneider call it irrelevant?
So I have a hot take kind of related to this later, and so I'll stick with my over. But I could definitely see him being like a 20 home run guy. I obviously the playing time does come into question a little bit, but I believe it. I believe in the power ability there, and like eventually this team just deciding that they need that in the lineup. So I'll go with Davis Schneider over 18 home runs.
I'm also going to go with over 18 home runs. I also think it's going to be in a much smaller sample size than people probably think. I think based on the way he hits the ball, like to me, a 30 home run season isn't completely out of the question one day
Wow.
because he's
Oh,
well,
one day.
one
Okay.
day, not this year necessarily, but the way this guy, he only crushes pitches he knows he can hit. So he only swings at pitches he knows he can crush, and he pulls the ball like nobody on this team. And this is a team with Danny Jansen on it. So he does the two things he needs to do to get basically more power than he needs, so to speak, or more power than he actually has. So if he's going to do that, if he's going to have this process that is clearly, to me, the correct process to try to hit more homers, then, maybe value wise, he's not going to be Alex Bregman, but Alex Bregman has sniffed 30 home runs, has he not? And to me, I'm sure that Davis Schneider has easily 25. And I think give it a year, give it two. I don't know that 30 is out of the question for him.
I mean, Bregman hit 41 in 2019.
So I'm just saying, like, Alex Bregman has a much better command of the strike zone than David Schneider. That much is certain. He doesn't strike out nearly as much, and I believe he walks at a better clip, which is saying something because David Schneider has a really good eye when it comes to drawing walks. But I do think that, if Alex Bregman can hit 40 home runs, David Schneider can hit 30.
Future Toronto Blue Jay Alex Bregman.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree there. I think 30 might be a little bit high just based on kind of the strikeout numbers, but I do agree kind of with the process stuff. So I think he'll be around that 18 mark this year. I do have a bold prediction that we'll get to in a bit, but yeah, I think he'll kind of get to that 20 mark this year for sure. All right, sticking for on my side on the pitchers, Chad Green. I'm gonna set his innings line this year at 55. Last year he pitched 12, and obviously coming off Tommy John, but I do wonder. I like so here's a question for you, like kind of unrelated to the over-unders, but who with Swanson and Romano out, who are you putting in as the Jays closer to begin the season?
I think right now it's Jimmy Garcia, but like he doesn't have a lockdown by any stretch. And it also kind of seems like Chad Green is their second setup guy behind Eric Swanson because, I mean, the way they have set up his contract and the way that they set up basically bringing him back and committing a substantial, by all accounts, a substantial portion of their offseason commitments to him. It seems to me like the plan is for him to be a high leverage, high usage, important reliever for this team. Now, is Chad Green still good? I don't
Yes,
actually know.
I would say yes.
12 inning sample. He's how old is he? 33, 34. He's definitely not under 30. I mean, he's past 30 at this point, well past 30. I don't actually know if he is good enough to be in that role, to be in that seventh inning, eighth inning high leverage role. But I think because of the Swanson and Romano injuries and the runway that's going to give him through the first 15, 20 games, I will say a reluctant over.
I'm taking the over. I think he's gonna be like, I almost think by the end of the year he's like their main setup guy. I think he looks really good. I mean, this spring he struck out 31.4% of the hitters, only walked 2.9. Last year in those 12 innings, he struck out 30.8% of hitters, walked 7.7. Obviously like bit a little bit by the home run bug this spring. Gave up quite a few runs in those 12 innings last year, but also one of those was like a Coors implosion. So I'm not really that concerned about him in general. I think he is going to be like a really key member of this Jays bullpen, and I think he almost ends the year as one of the main setup guys to Jordan Romano come playoff time.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a crazy thing, but I just don't have that much faith in him. And maybe it's unfounded. All the numbers say you should, but I just don't know if I have faith in him.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Like, I mean, like, do you have more faith in him or Jimmy Garcia?
Oh God. Ah man, I don't know. Neither of them. It's a bullpen. I don't like either of those guys. They're both good. They're both talented. Like, let's be real here. Like the Blue Jays have a top 10, maybe top 5 bullpen in
Yeah.
baseball. They're both probably good. I think you're probably a bigger believer in Green stuff, but I think based on how last year went and the fact that he pitched 12 innings, you're probably more of a Jimmy Garcia guy by default, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Garcia strikes out a lot of dudes, doesn't walk a lot of dudes. Chad Green strikes out a lot of dudes, doesn't walk a lot of dudes. That's essentially the recipe you want at the back end of your bullpen, along with like home run suppression, which I think they both do fairly well. So no complaints on either of them for me.
No. Okay, let's stick with the pitchers then, because we are definitely in pitcher mode. Blue Jays rotation is set. We've got 1 through 5 with Gosman going to be part of it. But the call it the three number twos or the three number threes, whatever you want to call them. Barrios, Bassett, Kikuchi. Kikuchi obviously bouncing back from a horrific 2022. Same goes for Barrios. Bassett comes in, has a successful first season, but also isn't, doesn't win any Cy Young awards with his pitching performance or anything like that. So the three of those guys combined 3.85 ERA over under.
Ooh, that's tough because last year Bassett was 3.6, Barrios was 3.6.5 or 3.65, and Kikuchi was 3.86. I do think that there will be a little bit of regression. I actually think that Barrios is going to have a really good year. Like I think he's going to like outperform what he did last year. I I kind of believe in what Kikuchi did as well. I'm a little bit worried about Bassett, obviously, just with kind of the approach there and whatever, like kind of a little bit of the peripheral stuff. I'm gonna go under, but I think it's close. I think it'll be like between the three of them, like a 3.75. I think Barrios goes like 3.4. I think Kikuchi goes 3.7, and then Bassett goes like 4.
I think I'm gonna have to reluctantly give you the over on that one, just because I just think 2/3 of that group in Bassett and Kikuchi just don't instill that much confidence in me. I do agree that Barrios is likely to have another good season, and I think that something in the 3.5 range for him is pretty reasonable. But Bass and Kikuchi to me scream for ERAs. Kikuchi, especially, a lot of room for regression with him. And I think with Bassett as well, just again, he's kind of like he throws the kitchen sink at you, but everything's kind of a beach ball. It's just that you never know which beach ball's coming, and that's kind of what fools you. So you figure that he probably again also has some regression. Don't forget that to begin last year, there was a lot of talk about him and Gosman at the top of the rotation, just shutting down guys. But Gosman was striking out 12, 13 guys per nine, and Bassett had a 189 BABIP or something. So very different approaches to the way they found success earlier in the year. And then, of course, Bassett hits a road bump mid-season, eventually kind of finds it, but up and down and up and down and up and down at some points, and eventually finishes with a positive season and a good season. And if I recall correctly, finishes on a pretty high note. But just to me, I feel like you're probably due for some negative regression on the Bassett front, which I think kind of is where that 3.85 ERA ends up ballooning a little bit.
It's close for sure. Like I think obviously Bassett, like very good pitcher, like knows what he's good at and does that well. And we'll see how it goes this year for sure. Just kind of while we're on the topic, I mean, Bound Francis, ERA prediction, no over under. What do you kind of think from him?
Yeah, he seems like a guy that could be somewhere in that 3.75, 3.8 range as well. I think anything close to last year would be absurd. But I also think it would be really cool if he was a sub 3 guy or even a sub 4 guy. I just don't see it happening.
I would probably lean on him being I would probably lean him being like a 4.3 ERA guy. That's what I would.
Somewhere in that ballpark
Yeah.
sounds about right.
Yeah. All right. The other potential member of this rotation, Alek Manoah. Very interesting. Again, this is one of those where I think it's either going to be way over or way under, but over under starts for Alek Manoah 14 and a half.
Is Alek Manoah still good? Because if he's good, it's the over. But I
I mean,
just don't think
that's the
he's good.
question,
I just
right?
don't.
Like
I
that
know.
that's
I
what
just
I'm
don't.
saying. Yeah.
He seems like he's a little bit kind of cooked here. I mean, the shoulder soreness in spring is certainly not a harbinger of good things to come. I don't.
Is that shoulder soreness, or is that I hit three dudes in the head and I need to not pitch in games yet?
Yeah, it's kind of tough to say, right? On vibes and excuse me, on vibes alone, I'm saying over, but a lot of that is throwing your hands up and praying.
I'm going to take the under. I think maybe it's not necessarily because of necessity, like not because of him specifically. I think that probably the rotation pitches well enough to the point where they're like, we can't afford to take this risk yet. So maybe it's a year of trying to work his way back at this point, and then you go from there and you say, let's see what a full year of like working on it does for you instead of trying to figure that out in the major leagues.
Dude, I think if that's the case, he's not a Blue Jay at the end of the season.
I that's a fair take. That's a probably fair enough. If it's kind of funny to think about like teams asking for him this offseason and then them not cutting bait almost. I mean, obviously the belief is there that he can get back, and it's tough to move off guys like Alek Manoah for sure.
Just a strange case through and through. Another potential rotation guy, maybe we'll see. Ricky Tiedemann, 12 and a half starts. Will Tariq be making his big league debut, and will he be pitching in major league games in any substantial capacity this season?
I'm gonna take the see. I just said this thing about Manoah not because they don't need it, but 12 and a half starts. Oh man, this is tough. That's tough because I think he's going to be up around midseason and he's going to be a significant part of this team. I'm just not sure whether that comes as a starter or whether they maybe piggyback him with somebody. I think it makes more sense to like keep him stretched out as a starter and develop him that way. So I will go 12 and a half. I'll go under, but it's going to be around like 12-ish. And I think he's like a significant member of the Toronto Blue Jays come September, October.
I think he's a significant part of the team come September and October, and as such, I say over. I think you can't take skill, or you can't keep skill down for too long, or just overwhelming talent down for too long. This guy, by everything we've heard, is dynamo, just an electric force on the mound. Everything we've seen, he's electric on the mound. I don't see any reason to believe that he can't force his way into the rotation, beating out a guy like a Baden Francis, like an Alek Manoah, becoming the fifth starter and getting a couple rotations in there, couple of cycles in there, and maybe making his way into playoff pitcher conversations if the pitching inning limit isn't too bad.
I think it's likely that he is a top five starter in the organization right now. But he just needs that seasoning, right? Like just that kind of a little bit of time in AAA to where they can manage his innings a little bit more there and then not have to worry about it in September. Whereas if you bring him up for opening day or whatever, you really do have to kind of manage those innings over the course of a larger sample, which as we go through it, I think that we'll see him quite a bit down the stretch. And because he threw what 62 innings last year. So you probably, I mean, like obviously there's no exact science, but you probably add like 25, 30 onto that. So he gets to 90. So I think, yeah, I think the under makes sense to me because you don't want to run him out too much, but you do want to use those bullets in significant innings down the stretch.
All right, here's my hot take. I think you are way low on that innings cap here. I think, and I know we haven't gotten to the bold predictions segment quite yet, but that adding 25 innings, if you do that, it takes you 3 years to double his innings, basically. They're going to at least double his innings this year, I think. I think he's easily surpassing 100 innings. I think you're probably approaching 130 innings with him. You have to if you have any intention of this guy being a starting pitcher.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, how many innings would have he thrown last year without being hurt?
Probably would have gotten to 100.
So I guess if you look at it that way, I mean, also we don't know how many innings that he threw like at the complex last year or whatever, like kind of behind closed doors. So maybe there is more of that. But I mean, like even the year before he threw like 70 innings, so we get to 100 and then yeah, I mean I guess maybe you do get him to kind of 130 or more, but I just it everything that they've told us about him so far is that they're going to be extra cautious with him. So I don't know. I think like 130 is a lot of innings for him, and well, we'll see.
I mean, if he pitches 130 innings, stays healthy, he's he's electric. Like there's no telling what the potential is for him, right? But I mean, if he gets hurt, he gets hurt, and it's kind of like, again, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. You ride these guys, and I mean, we just saw it with Nate Pearson. 5 years ago, he was electric, and now he's nothing. He's a outside guy for your bullpen. You obviously don't want the same thing to happen to Tiedemann, and there were a lot of injuries on the way with Pearson. He broke his elbow and dealt with oblique, and he had mono and this and that. But I don't think that you can baby Tiedemann to the point where you're adding 20 innings a year and he's not throwing 160, 180 innings for you until he's like 25.
I mean, yeah, like I don't know. Did we just see it with Manoah where he throws 111, or I guess he throws like 130 innings in 2021, and then he jumps to 200 in 2022? How much does that play a role in what's going on with him right now?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. But I mean, that's fair.
And I mean, like obviously this is like kind of off board here, but like how much, like if you dial back Manoah to like 170 innings, you hold him back a little bit in 2022. But I like you can't really say that because 2022 you're going for it, right? Like if you hold back Ricky Tiedemann to like be throwing 200 innings in 2026 when Vlad and Bo are potentially gone, and you just have Ricky Tiedemann throwing the best innings of his career for a team that is probably rebuilding at that point, right? Like there's no use in that. Like this is your window and you need to go for it. Like it's almost a time where you need to take those risks a little bit and expand those. It's tough because you don't want to like you want to do right by the player too and let them have a long and successful career, but like you want to win now, and he maybe gives you the best chance to do that.
Which seems like it would lead to maybe having him be a substantial part of this team's roster.
Glad that I don't have to make those decisions because that's way above my pay grade. Is that all your player props as over unders?
I've got a couple more, but that's the best. That's the biggest ones. That's the best ones.
All right, let's move on to a team over under here and kind of the the main one that everybody's going to be looking at. FanDuel has the Toronto Blue Jays over under for wins set at 86.5.
That's such a juicy over to me that it's like almost like tantalizing. Yankees are going to be better. Orioles are the Orioles, but I have a take on that as well. And the Rays are still the Rays. So 86 wins seems insanely attainable. They have failed to reach that mark. What have they failed to reach that mark since basically the Vladdy Guerrero Jr. era began, save for 2019, 2020? Because they've hovered around 90 wins, 21, 22, 23. To me, 86 wins would be such a dramatic drop from where they have shown they are that I struggle to see how how is Matt Chapman worth 5 wins to this team? But also in a vacuum, you don't account for adding, even if it's a little, Justin Turner, IKF, and presumed improvements from Vlad, a healthy Bo, Davis Schneider for a full season, and an improved Dalton Varsho. Just to me, the biggest place this team is lacking is on the hitting department. And of course, there's room for regression on the pitching department, and that much we've discussed as far as the ERA stuff goes. But there is to me a more dramatic ceiling on the hitting than there is a floor on the pitching. So 86 wins to me is just lunacy. And I think you gotta take the over.
Yeah, I agree. 86 and a half is pretty low. Like, do I think that they got better than the team that they were last year? I would say no. Do I think that there's like you said, like there's a chance that the hitting like totally flips and looks more like the hitting that we've expected for a few years, and that pushes you right back up to kind of like that 89-90 win mark, right? So I think they're probably a very similar finishing team to the way that they did last year with like 90-ish wins. What do you think in terms of like specific, if you had to predict a final win total, what would you say?
89 wins. I think they're the exact same team they were last year.
I'm gonna be right there with you. I think 89 is kind of the way we go. With that said, though, let's go to another over under, kind of related to team performance for us maybe as well. With so last year we started I guess the year in May and ended up recording one emergency pod that was kind of unplanned, and it was after the Texas Rangers series. So this year, with us being like maybe a little bit more into it, or not into it, but like a little bit more
Dialed in.
engaged, dialed in. Yeah, let's emergency pods recorded by us this season. I'm setting the over under at 2.5.
Over. Easy over. There's gonna be a
You're
series. There's gonna be a series in May that the Blue Jays give up 73 runs in a 4 game span, and we're all like, it's over. Cancel the season, trade Vlad, trade Bo, and we will do that precisely 7 times this season.
7 times. All right. Well, I mean, we have recorded two emergency pods. I don't know if we really want to consider the Santiago Espinal trade reaction an emergency pod, but this off season. So I could definitely see us going north of 2.5. All right.
Sounds like a good goal.
Yes, yes. Let's rapid fire these questions here. Not quite over unders, but just kind of some team related results. As we're kind of pushing up on the hour mark here, a little bit over, but let's rapid fire here. I'll go to you, and then you can kind of come back to me if you want, and then we can kind of just go back and forth with this. Starting off, do the Toronto Blue Jays make the postseason?
Yes, I don't think that there's any way that they miss because this team is the exact same as they were last year, which is roughly speaking a middle of the pack wild card ish team.
I'm also saying yes. Off of that, postseason results.
They win around. Maybe. I hope
They,
so. It would really suck if they didn't. They got to win around.
I guess we probably should have gone finishing the AL East first, but
Well, in that case, I'll say again. Are we getting into our bold predictions? Because that's where I think I've got to give you kind of the take.
all right. I'll based on those two, I will say the Toronto Blue Jays finish third in the AL East once again. However, I will also say that they win the wild card game and then lose in the ALDS.
Okay, that sounds about reasonable to me, and I would say that I don't want to just agree with you, but it's hard not to agree that the Blue Jays probably are due for some positive playoff results. You say due, who even knows at this point? But the top of the American League is very, very strong. So we'll
So
see if they
here's
have the stuff to.
here are my thoughts with this Blue Jays team. So I say lose in the ALDS, but I think that if they are good enough to win the wild card series, that they are good enough to win the World Series. Does that make sense? Like as to where like this team where it's like it like last year they weren't good enough to win the wild card series. And obviously like so that like even if they'd beaten the Twins, like there would have been nothing happening in the ALDS. But I think that like last year, if the offense was better, that they would have been good enough to win the wild card. And then if the offense was better combined with the pitching, they would have been good enough to win the ALDS, the ALCS, and like make their way to the World Series. So I'm thinking like if everything comes together for them, like the ceiling is the World Series. Like it's a World Series caliber team if everything breaks right. And to me, it's like if things are breaking right for this Blue Jays team, they're gonna break right. And that it's like it's not just gonna be almost one round. It's gonna be that they can like beat an AL East team in the ALDS if they need to. They can probably go toe to toe with like the Astros who have some question marks themselves in an ALCS or an ALDS. And then, you know, like so to me, I say like losing the ALDS, but I almost feel like if they're good enough to win the wild card, that they're good enough to go to the World Series.
No, I see what you're saying there, and I don't disagree. But you need so much to go your way to go the distance,
Yeah.
and I think making a claim like that off of the ability to win a 3-game set against basically what's going to amount to a team roughly in their ballpark, assuming that they don't finish as the 6th seed, in which case you might be in a little bit more tough. But to me, I think it's difficult to say that necessarily. Now, I mean, we just saw last year there was a low 80s win Diamondbacks team going the distance and losing in the World Series. It's totally doable for the Blue Jays to make a run, but and especially in those later series, in the CS, especially in the 7-game sample, you're gonna have to hit your way to that. You're gonna have to crush your way to that, and we'll see if the Blue Jays can crush their way to any kind of substantial playoff success.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, that's what this team is going to be judged by, right? Like their performance in October and the end point of the year. All right. Players on the team to win end of season awards. This might come like as a bold prediction, but for either of us, like you might have included this in your bold prediction. Obviously, you said you think Kevin Gosman's going to win the Cy Young. So who else you got being a end of year award winner?
I think you've got at least one Gold Glove, maybe two, maybe three. So I think right there, you're up to maybe three or four. I think five isn't out of the question. I think you can. I don't know what exactly that fifth award is, and those are the tougher awards to win. The Hank Aaron, the MVP, the Silver Slugger. But I could see five. I could see five awards coming away. I could see two or three Gold Gloves. This is a team built around defense, and then I think Kevin Gosman can come away with the Cy Young, and then you just need your hitting to do its part. So I will say five.
Okay. Okay. I have like my actual guys. So I have IKF winning the third base Gold Glove, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. winning the Silver Slugger at first base, Bo Bichette winning the Silver Slugger at shortstop, and then the team winning the team Gold Glove award again.
So you got four.
Yeah.
No, no Dalton Varsho Gold Glove. No Kevin Kiermaier Gold Glove.
I think it'll be the same thing with Varsho where like his splitting time between center and left basically costs him a Gold Glove. I would
Which
say
seems reasonable.
like it's kind of sucks. Like I would easily pick him to win the left field Gold Glove, but Stephen Kwan is a exceptional left fielder, and him spending all of his time there compared to Dalton Varsho spending half his time there makes it tough for Varsho to really take that award. So
Reasonable.
yeah, kind of in the same vein as that, Toronto Blue Jays All Stars for you.
I think you're probably looking at maybe I'll say four. I'll say you're looking at one guy from the rotation, probably Gosman. You're maybe looking at one guy from the bullpen, probably Romano, and then I feel like you could maybe squeeze in Vlad, maybe goes based on the power, and maybe he participates in the home run derby. And then you're looking at maybe Bo, maybe Davis Schneider. Everybody falls
Just
in
from the
love.
votes, from the voting,
Just from
yeah.
the voting. I mean, maybe Kevin Kiermaier gets a nod if his power is for real. Maybe Varsho gets a nod if his power is for real. Don't forget, it's only the first half of the season they've got to have success in.
Yeah.
Alejandro Kirk was an all-star 2 years ago.
Santiago Espinal was
Was
an
an
all-star
all-star.
too. Whit Merrifield was an
Was an
all-star.
all-star. I
So
think they
you're
could.
saying that the Blue Jays' second run of second baseman making all-star games is over?
I'm just saying. Well, I'm not saying that. I did say David Schneider could be in the mix. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
All right. I have Vlad, Bo, Gossman, Romano, and George Springer making the all-star game.
George Springer. That's an interesting inclusion.
I'm feeling good about Springer. I think he'll have a good start to the year.
That would be important for the Blue Jays because he was healthy, but not really a factor last season.
Yeah. I think he'll be able to kind of turn things around this year for sure. He's kind of one guy that I think there's an easy fix for him getting back to the type of season that they need from him. If you're good, we can kind of move on to our bold predictions and run
I have
through
been waiting
those.
for this.
All right. I'll let you start us off.
All right. Here's my first one. Vlad and Bo combine for 12 WAR.
12 WAR.
So
wow.
Maybe someone has a 6 WAR season. Maybe someone has a 7 WAR season. Maybe someone has an 8 WAR season. Bo and Vlad combine for 12 WAR.
That is. I mean, that's got to be like. That's crazy because Vlad in his 2021 was like so you're saying like they're probably like both 6 WAR players essentially.
I mean, listen, if Bo continues to progress on the defensive side of the ball, he can be a 6-win player. If Vlad can hit like he did in his MVP season, he can be a 6 WAR player. Those dudes can combine for a 12 WAR season.
All right. I like it. That is that's very bold, and
it's a bold take. It's not necessarily what I think will happen, but I think it's a bold outcome.
Let me just put it this way. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman last year combined for a 15 win season.
Teammates can do it.
Essentially 16.
Yeah.
Semien and Seager last year, 12 wins. So that's what you're looking at. That would be insanely fun if they did that.
Insanely fun. All right, you're up.
Okay, my first one I already revealed, which was IKF winning the Gold Glove at third base. I'm going to go to my next one. Davis Schneider is the everyday second baseman by the time the playoffs roll around.
Is that a bold take?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I put it in my bold predictions. I think this is a sign of Davis Schneider being good and Kevin Biggio maybe not being so great.
Maybe not being on the team, maybe?
I mean, like, look, Kevin Biggio is the exact type of player that I love to watch with like the strike zone control. And obviously he had like the really good second half last year, right? Where it seemed like he kind of figured out what he wanted to do, right? And he had a 124 WRC plus in the second half and made like some significant swing changes. But he also ran like a 355 BABIP, and we'll see. I just think the Davis Schneider impact on the team can be so much higher. So that's kind of where I'm going with that one.
All right, I'm going to go with my next prediction. Daniel Vogelbach and Joey Votto overlap for more than 15 games. And I say that because I think there will be injuries in play, and I think maybe a slow start. And maybe you kind of look at the intangibles that Votto brings and you go, we're going to bring him in to settle down the clubhouse. And I'm not saying that they necessarily play in a lot of the same games, but I'm saying their tenures overlap
for 15 games
in a 15 game or more sample.
If that happens, people are going to be pissed at the front office.
Because of what? Because Vogelbach sticks around and Votto is sitting around doing nothing?
Because what's the point of having them both on the roster at the same time?
I mean, listen, maybe Justin Turner gets hurt, and
Yeah.
maybe that opens a door. Maybe IKF gets hurt, and you end up with Justin Turner playing third base, and then that opens up. There's avenues for this to happen. That's my take.
Yeah, that's an interesting take.
And also, don't forget, Kevin Biggio has a lot of positional versatility. So his presence on the roster, albeit not the most attractive hitter, his ability to basically play every position save for center field and shortstop make him pretty important to the nucleus of this team.
Yeah, that also played into my David Schneider thing where it's like Kevin Biggio, like if David Schneider's the everyday second baseman, like Kevin Biggio still can play elsewhere on the roster. So I have a Joey Votto one, and it's that he is the team's designated hitter in game one of the playoffs.
That's a fun one. So where's Justin Turner?
Maybe playing third base, maybe on the bench.
Maybe on the bench. That'd be
I'm
kind of
just
fun.
thinking, like, if you're looking potential playoff matchups, like who's bringing out a lefty game one?
No
This
idea.
this is essentially me saying that Joey Votto slaps righties this year, and Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo, Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, Zach Eflin, Jacob DeGrom. I'm just thinking of all the potential playoff teams like number one starters, and they're all righties. So I think Votto is going to make himself so invaluable against right-handed pitching that he's the designated hitter in game one of the playoffs.
I see it. I see it. I see the vision. I see the vision. All right, I'm coming with my next hot take here. The Blue Jays finish within 3 games, plus or minus the Baltimore Orioles, who don't win the division.
Sure, sure, yeah, yeah. I don't
I'm
mind that.
I am going to go on the record here as an anti-Orioles. Do not believe in the young nucleus coming in and immediately being amazing situation. I think that they're starting Jackson Holiday in AAA. He'll probably be up by end of the month. I also think that they're banking a lot on really young dudes. I don't think that their pitching is that good. I mean, Corbin Burns speaks for himself, but beyond that, I don't really know how much I believe in that. They're not going to have Felix Bautista. I just think that this is a team that has overperformed expectations the last couple of years and is due for some negative regression and has a lot of young guys with a lot of question marks.
Interesting. I mean, I like the Orioles. I like their starting staff. I think it like kind of gets the job done. It like obviously come postseason time, like maybe not so much, but the bullpen definitely some question marks there. Like you got Yennier Cano, you got Craig Kimbrell, and then you don't got a whole lot of reliable pieces. Um, I think my question mark team is the Yankees, and like I get it. I get that they got Juan Soto, but who is pitching for this team? Like Garrett Cole's gone for 2 months. Nestor Cortez is I almost want to say like a one season wonder. Carlos Rodon is not the pitcher that he can be. Marcus Stroman, like, is he the most stable starter in their staff?
He might be.
I just don't. I just like, yeah, they're gonna. I think the offense for them bounces back for sure. I mean, how can it not with Soto and Rizzo being healthy and obviously Aaron Judge being there and getting Verdugo. But I just don't believe in the pitching staff. So like, I mean, for me, I have been picking the Orioles to win the division, but I just the Yankees. Like I know I said that I think the Jays finished third in the division, but I almost would lean that the Jays finish above the Yankees.
I also think that can't forget about the pesky Rays. So that's the other question mark. The fact that you
Yeah,
basically
I
can never
mean,
count them out kind of
it's
makes
the
it difficult.
I was because I projected that they wouldn't make the playoffs last year, but like when I like I like their lineup. I think their lineup is good, and of course will get the most out of the hitters. And just I don't know when they're getting some of their pitchers back, like Shane Baz and Taj Bradley. They'll be there eventually, but like I mean McClanahan, Rasmussen, and Springs. I'm not sure when those guys are going to be ready. Obviously after going Tommy John, and then the rotation like Eflin and Savali. fairly confident will be like good pitchers, but then like Zach Littell, Tyler Alexander, and I'm still not 100% sure what we're going to get from Ryan Pepio. So like again, like it's the Rays, so you just generally assume that those guys are going to be good. And then the bullpen too, where I mean the bullpen looks pretty good, not going to lie. Like that's a pretty solid group. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think one year they'll miss. They'll miss the playoffs one year.
Eventually, right?
And it's maybe it'll be this year. So yeah, so I'll go to my next hot take here, and it is that the Blue Jays make a significant in-season trade.
Okay, well, let me jump in with my because I have one that's kind of related to that. I think that significant ad is a starting pitcher.
I like it. I like it. I'm thinking in the same vein because I think there's gonna, like we
Who's number
mentioned,
5? Who's the 5th starter? Who's and what if Barrios or Bassett or Kikuchi struggle? Who's comprises that 5? Sure, Tiedemann maybe, but we
Mitch
just talked
White.
about this innings cap. Mitch White. Well, should I just jump in with my next hot take? Is that Mitch White and his sexy velo bump are on insert middling Central Division team by July. So I don't think he's the answer either. I think that they're going to have to add a starting pitcher at the deadline. And I don't know who's going to be made available. I don't know who is necessarily seemingly on the block, but I think that the Blue Jays take a swing on a starting pitcher when the trade deadline rolls around.
Yeah, I like that take. I was thinking that in the same vein when I said that they would make a significant in-season addition, and I'm thinking like Shane Bieber, maybe um like maybe can you do a Freddie Peralta trade?
I mean, that would
Um
be really fun. See, like, here's the thing is that last year was the same thing that happened. It was there were clearly places they needed to upgrade, but they had guys for every position that were fine and you could, in theory, just run with, right? So there was nowhere to really add, and the deadline was kind of not, it was there was no deadline to speak of. It was kind of like, well, they added Jordan Hicks, but like it's not a guy you want to really build a deadline around, right? So to me, it's a similar team, but instead of having 5 starting pitchers and everyone be healthy with a little bit of negative regression, to me starting pitching is where that ad gets made.
yeah, I like it. I totally am on the same page as you as to where like there's going to be a pitching need eventually at some point this year. All right. Oh, I guess I'll let you go because that was my hot take.
Well, I kind of gave you one with Mitch White, so I'll give you, this is my final hot take, and then I'll let you set the floor with your final hot take after
All right.
this. The Blue Jays throw a no-hitter.
Ooh, fun. That's fun. Who does it? Combined or solo?
I mean, it's so obvious to pick Kevin Gosman, but I think we've given him a lot of love this episode. So I'll give another guy a lot of love or another guy that we've also given some love to. I'll give the no to Jose Barrios.
Jose Barrios,
Throws a
very
no
nice.
no. He dices up.
The Tampa Bay
I don't
Rays on
know.
opening day.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? I don't know. We'll say he dices up. I will give you. I don't know exactly. I don't know if the Blue Jays play on the state. I don't know their schedule. He throws his no hitter on June 14th.
June 14th. All right. Should we
Don't
look
know
up
if
who
he's
they're
lined up
playing
for
on?
that. Let's see who they're playing, and let's see
Probably
if
a
he's.
Toronto Blue Jays off day.
Oh, definitely, and they're probably not even lined up to be him. But I'll say he
Bah.
throws a no on June 14th.
All right, let me pull it up here. June 14th, hey? They are playing at home against the Cleveland Guardians.
You never know. Not impossible.
Not bad. I don't mind it. I
Not
like
bad.
it. I like it. All right. My next couple bold predictions are like prospect based, so I'll just rip through them super quick. I've got Arjun Nimala finishes the year at Double A
Fun one.
and is a top 20 prospect.
Oh, love that. That's a good one. That's the Buffalo Wild Wings spicy hot take of the night.
And then in the same vein, Landon Rowdis is a consensus top 100 prospect by the end of the year.
Nice.
Easy,
Well,
easy work there.
I mean, listen, similar helium to Ricky Tiedemann a couple years back is everything that we've heard as well. So I like
Yeah.
both those. I like the vision. I like the vision.
And then I have Brandon Barriera makes a significant bounce back.
That would be very, very fun.
And I will leave it there. I will leave my hot takes at or bold predictions, not hot takes at that. I guess before we go, let's just do a quick league wide pick thing real quick. I'll get you to pick each of your division winners and then MVPs, Cy Youngs, rookies of the year, and then we'll do World Series champ.
All right, let's rip right through this. So the American League winner for me, American League East, I'm going to take the Yankees. I think it's too hard not to take them. In the Central, I'm going to say the Kansas City Royals, everybody's favorite breakout pick. In the American League West, it's pretty hard not to pick the reigning World Series champion Texas Rangers.
All right, I have the Orioles winning the AL East, the Twins winning the AL Central, and the Astros winning the AL West.
Okay. A little bit of disagreement. And then
Who
the East,
wait, who are your three wildcard teams?
My three wildcard teams. Well, I've got the Orioles and the Blue Jays for 2. That much is locked in. And then for the AL West, I think you kind of have to go Astros. I just don't think there's a lot of room for maneuverability. And the Mariners might squeak in there, but I guess we'll see.
My three wildcard teams are Yankees, Blue Jays, and Mariners. I have the Rangers missing out.
Even after winning the World Series.
The little jump ahead, but neither of last year's World Series teams are making the playoffs in my projections.
Okay. Should I go ahead with NL East now?
Yep, go NL.
All right, NL East, I'm going to say you're looking at the Atlanta Braves, an extremely not hot take. In the NL Central, so I was talking with a couple of friends yesterday. Apparently, none of the NL Central teams are projected to win more than 84 games. Not a great division, and kind of sounds like everyone sucks. I know that a lot of people have the Reds as kind of the NL Central up and coming next team. I'm gonna give you the Chicago Cubs. I just think that they're in a Blue Jays kind of area, and I think that there's some room for them to be the winners of that division. And then the NL West, who else? The Los Angeles Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani in tow.
Yep, I have the same 3 picks as you. So fun stuff there. My wildcard teams: Phillies, Cardinals, Padres.
I'm gonna say for wild card, and this is all off the dome, I'll say Phillies. I will give the Marlins some love. They did make the playoffs last year. I'll give the Marlins some love. And maybe it's just out of respect. I'm not going to do the Diamondbacks dirty. I got to say the Diamondbacks make the playoffs once again.
Yeah, I had a tough time like leaving the Giants out after they did so much this offseason, but I like the Padres. So all right. Let's go MVPs. Who do you got as your 2?
All right, my AL MVP. Picked the Kansas City Royals to win the American League Central, and Bobby Witt Jr. is my American League MVP.
Fun. I have Julio Rodriguez. I think the Mariners are in for a big year. NL
MVP. I've got Fernando Tatis Jr. I think that he, in a similar vein, is a projectable, is a really good player, and as long as there's no motorcycle accidents that we haven't heard about, he seems like he is certainly a bit of a next in line type for MVP, especially with Ohtani not pitching this season.
I have him as well. I think the defense plus the offense is going to be easy for him to. I mean, Acuna is tempting as a back-to-back pick. I wrote at Just Baseball the other day about the potential that he could be even better this year. But I feel like Tatis is going to be in for a big year as well. So
seems like the guy.
Yeah. Who are both of your Cy Youngs?
Both Cy Youngs. In the AL, I've got Cole Ragans, big Cole Ragans.
Cole Ragans. This guy is all over the Royals.
I know. It's that one might be more of a gamble than a projection, so to speak. But I've got Cole Ragans as my AL Cy Young, big believer in that lefty. And my NL Cy Young, I've got Freddie Peralta, big believer in Freddie Peralta. Now, if he does get traded and if it does happen to end up with the Blue Jays, I would be very happy I don't think that would be necessarily what would happen or whatever, but I'm a big Freddie Peralta believer and what he can bring to the Brewers.
All right. I have got Pablo Lopez in the American League and Spencer Strider in the National League.
I love the Pablo Lopez pick. I think
He's very good.
That's a very nice pick as well.
He's a very good pitcher. So.
Although I did also say Kevin Gausman was my Cy Young pick earlier in the episode, so I've kind of contradicted myself here. I should clarify.
Kevin Reagans / Kevin Gausman.
I think they're going to share it. I think they'll have. I think they'll come to an agreement. No, we'll say both.
All right. Give me your World Series pick to wrap things up because I know you got to run here.
All right. World Series pick to wrap things up. I'll say Braves over the Toronto Blue Jays.
Fun. I like it. And I'm going to go Braves over Astros.
Braves over Astros.
Sorry.
The Braves seem to be due for something good this year.
I mean, they're very good, and obviously the Dodgers are very good too, and it just feels too against baseball for the Dodgers to win.
I don't know. The Dodgers are the easy pick, but let's be real here for a sec. Do we really think the Dodgers are gonna beat, the 84 win Miami Marlins when they meet in the NLDS? I mean, only one of those teams is coming out on top.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Like that series, like a potential NLCS Braves Dodgers, must watch.
I know that's probably what happens, and that would be must see baseball.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, we went for, I think over an hour and a half. So we are going to run. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe on YouTube, follow and review wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate you listening. It is officially baseball season. Let's go. We are super excited to get things going this year, and we'll catch you sometime after opening day.